97. That's where we're going to find our text, page 97. Or if you're going to read it out of the Bible, Proverbs 12, 1 through 16. You know, again, we're studying poetry this quarter. Normally it's not easy teaching the third lesson in a 3-lesson series because you have pretty much exhausted the subject that we're talking about. But in this case, we've been talking about wisdom. And Josh did a great job 2 weeks ago, talking about the voice of wisdom. And then last week, Jackie did well speaking about the value of wisdom. And this morning, we're going to talk about the fruits of wisdom. So I need to say over and over, I don't know if I will because I hardly ever say what I plan to say, but I hope to say over and over that one of the purposes, one of the reasons we should desire wisdom is to bear fruit. A Christian's job is not just getting to heaven. A Christian's job is to take people with him. So hopefully I'll say that often enough. We're told that Solomon wrote most of the book that we refer to as Proverbs. Before we start our lesson, if you've got your Bibles, and I hope you do, turn to 1 Kings chapter 4. Verses 29 through 34. We often refer to Solomon as the wisest man. And we make a big deal about the wisdom Solomon had. Sometimes we take it for granted, I think. So I want us to read this just for the purpose of, we didn't just make this up. 1 Kings 4, 29 through 34. Now God gave Solomon wisdom and very great discernment and breadth of mind, like the sand that is on the seashore. Solomon's wisdom surpassed the wisdom of all the sons of the east and all the wisdom of Egypt, for he was wiser than all men. Then Ethan the Ezrahite, Heman, Calcol, and Darda, the sons of Mahol, and his fame was known in all the surrounding nations. He also spoke 3,000 proverbs, and his songs were 1,005. He spoke of trees, from the cedar that is in Lebanon, even to the hyssop that grows on the wall. He spoke also of animals and birds and creeping things and fish. And men came from all peoples to hear the wisdom of Solomon, from all the kings of the earth who had heard of Solomon. Now obviously Solomon was a wise man. And we need to pray for wisdom. We're going to read later in James where we're told to do that. How did Solomon come by his wisdom? Do you remember? If you go back to 1 Kings chapter 3, you'll see where it happened. Solomon was the son of David. David dies. Solomon takes over. Solomon prays to God for discernment, for judgment, for wisdom to be able to rule his people. Solomon was very humble at this time. Now we'll read later, we won't read it today, but we know that later Solomon maybe wasn't so humble.
Good morning.
As a matter of fact, I would argue with you maybe that Solomon wasn't so wise.
Take this opportunity.
But still, Solomon was given wisdom. He was very humble, and he prayed to God for this discernment. 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 6 through 9. And then later, he asked for wisdom rather than riches or long life. And later, God tells him, verse 10 and on down, he answers Solomon back in his prayer. And he tells him that because you ask for wisdom and discernment rather than long life or riches, you're going to have all three as long as you obey me. as long as you keep God's commandments. And he did as long as he kept God's commandments. Now, one more thing, and then we'll get on to the real meat of the lesson, I think. I wrote down, we know this already, but Proverbs 1:1, the Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel, to know wisdom and instruction, to discern the sayings of the understanding. And I'm not going to get finished if I read all this, but all the way down through verse 7, he's talking about discernment, judgment, wisdom. That's what he needed to do what he needed to do. Now, turn to Proverbs 4, 5 and 7. Again, this is Solomon talking. Basically addressed this to his son, but because of record keeping and the passing of time, we have this to also study and to help us. Proverbs 4, 5 through 7. Acquire wisdom, acquire understanding. Do not forget, nor turn away from the words of my mouth. Do not forsake her, and she will guard you. Love her, and she will watch over you. The beginning of wisdom is acquire wisdom. And with all your acquiring, get understanding. You know, sometimes we talk about beginning to start to commence. So that's kind of what he's saying. The beginning to acquire wisdom is acquire wisdom. You've got to start somewhere. Take the step. Think things through. Later in Proverbs 8 and 11, he says, for wisdom is better than rubies, and all the things one may desire cannot be compared with her. Searching for wisdom, taking time and trying to study and think things through. You know, we make fun sometimes of deep thoughts. Well, sometimes we just need to sit and stare at the wall and meditate, I think. But it's not a trivial pursuit. These are important things. Wisdom's important because of the fruit. Again, I want to say this over and over. It's not, we don't acquire wisdom just to say we're wise. We need to be able to use that wisdom. There's a purpose for all this. And it's to bear fruit. An example is those who are wise control their tongues and use their speech in an appropriate way. Now, I don't want to see a show of hands, but I want you to think for a minute. How many of us have said something that we immediately regretted? Or maybe later. Maybe we're not smart enough at first to realize that we should immediately regret it. Joey, you shouldn't point at your wife. Let me tell you, let the voice of experience speak to you, son. Don't nudge her, don't look at her, don't point at her, because you're going home after a while. And I've done all that. Proverbs 15:2 says, the tongue of the wise uses knowledge rightly, but the mouth of fools pours forth foolishness. Again, think of your own life. Think of people that you have been around. Think of people you know today. Susan talks about some of the ladies back in the old women's class. About sometimes, you know, there are those that, and we all know these people. They'll hardly say anything. But buddy, when they do, you better listen closely. Because they are wise. And it's important when they say something. But we also know the other kind. The kind of people who, when they walk in a room, you're thinking of an excuse, I want to walk out because I don't want to listen to that fool talk blah, 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 about junk. We all know those people, right? I bet you've got somebody like that at work. Or at school. Or at family reunions. Or sitting over at the ballpark in the stands. Here's to the part where we get to step on Johnny's toes. Wise individuals maintain self-control. Proverbs 11:2 says, he who is devoid of wisdom despises his neighbor, but a man of understanding holds his peace. Remember when I said a minute ago, have you ever said something and you wish you could just reach back out and grab it? We've all done that, haven't we? Okay, I have practiced this little phrase over and over, Jackie. Our text this morning is written in antithetical parallelism. How do you like that? Antithetical parallelism. I'm going to say it over and over because I've been practicing it over and over. I had no idea what that means, and still, to tell you the truth, I don't know all what it means. But the author of the Teacher's Manual, not the book we're studying, but the Teacher's Manual that helps us teachers, says this is important because these chapters that we're studying, Proverbs 10 on down through about 22, were written specifically by Solomon. And this chapter is written in this antithetical parallelism. And all it means is that basically there's two lines. The second line is saying roughly the same thing or something very close that the first line did, except it's saying in exactly opposite terms. Now, look at the first verse in our text, and maybe this will make sense. Whoever loves instruction loves knowledge, but he who hates correction is stupid. Now, let me immediately, you see what he's saying though, right? First line says almost the same thing, just in a whole lot different language. In fact, in this case, opposite language. But since I said stupid, let me tell you a story. You know, trying to worship, sitting on the same bench with Caroline is trying at best. She rarely sits still. She tends to say out loud whatever pops in her head. If she goes to the bathroom, when she comes back, she has to give a report to the 3 benches behind her of what all happened. There's usually at least one meal involved and nearly always a drink. We stepped on goldfish back there this morning. I had to clean that up. You would think as much movement and as much as is going on back there that she's not listening. And probably, let me jump ahead, most of the time she's not. But 2 or 3 weeks ago, Edward was preaching and he said something about Jesus stooping down. She told her mama, we don't say stupid. So don't think they're not listening. Now maybe it doesn't always sink in, or maybe they're not paying attention, but they're listening. Anyway, let's read our whole text. Whoever loves instruction loves knowledge, but he who hates correction is stupid. A good man obtains favor from the Lord, but a man of wicked intentions he will condemn. A man is not established by wickedness, but the root of the righteous cannot be moved. An excellent wife is the crown of her husband, but she who causes shame is like rottenness in the bones. Now, you see what I'm saying about he's saying the same thing in the second line, but opposite terms? He's showing a contrast. Verse 5. The thoughts of the righteous are right, but the counsels of the wicked are deceitful. The words of the wicked are lie in wait for blood, but the mouth of the upright will deliver them. The wicked are overthrown and are no more, but the house of the righteous will stand. A man will be commended according to his wisdom, but he who is of a perverse heart will be despised. Better is the one who is slighted but has a servant than he who honors himself but lacks bread. And by the way, I had to look up and see what that meant. When he's talking about slighted there, one of the authors pointed out that a better translation would have been lowly. So basically he's saying better is the one who is lowly or who is humble but has a servant. And then again, the opposite way, than he who honors himself but lacks bread. A righteous man regards the life of his animal, but the tender mercies of the wicked are cruel. He who tills his land will be satisfied with bread, but he who follows frivolity is devoid of understanding. The wicked, the wicked covet the catch of evil men, but the root of the righteous yields fruit. The wicked is ensnared by the transgression of his lips, but the righteous will come through trouble. A man will be satisfied with good by the fruit of his mouth, and the recompense of a man's hands will be rendered to him. The way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but he who heeds counsel is wise. A fool's wrath is known at once, but a prudent man covers shame. Now, it's easy for us to read through this and we think through these things and take them for granted. Of course, a righteous man is more fun to be around, more pleasant to be around, and a wise man. But we need to model ourselves after that and be that way. This lesson text provides a cross-section of life. Now, it's not on one specific topic like sometimes when we're studying a lesson that Jesus taught, but rather it illustrates how wisdom can benefit man in a variety of ways. It's encouraging us as Christians to be wise and to use wisdom. By the way, what's the difference between knowledge and wisdom, do you think? That's not completely off the subject, but I'm going down a rabbit trail there.
You can know a lot of things and not know how to use it.
We talk about common sense sometimes, and we always just like to point out that common sense is not common. I went to school with a boy that's a couple of years older than me, smart as a whip, but he had no common sense at all. At that time, I was going to church with a girl who had the great talent of being able to burp on command. It's great in a crowd. So we're sitting at lunch one day in the Commons, and she burps into this straw and holds both ends as if she's got the burp trap. And then she holds it out and she says to Dillard, "Dillard, watch this." And she takes her thumb off the straw and she burps, and he doesn't even see her. He thinks the burp came out of the straw. He's a really smart guy. Not much common sense. And sometimes I think we're that way about knowledge. You can study and memorize and learn lots of facts. But if you don't use them, and if you don't make use of them, there's no wisdom there. So I don't know if that's the difference, but it's one of the things we think about. Turn back to Proverbs 11, verse 30. I told you I want to say fruit all I can in this lesson. The fruit of the righteous is a tree of life, and he who wins souls is wise. That's why we're on the earth. If we boil it all down to why are we here, we're to go to heaven and take people with us. Scriptures, lots of different ones, but they frequently emphasize the importance of listening to wise counsel. Rather than acting on our own, we need to seek the advice of others. Now, that's a two-edged sword. What if I ask somebody to give me some advice and it's bad advice? A lot of these proverbs start out with that Solomon wrote, start out with "my son." It makes you think he wrote these proverbs down to try to teach his son, who, by the way, his name was Rehoboam. When Solomon died, if you want to see the record of this is in 1 Kings 12, 6 through 15. When Solomon died, he called Rehoboam, takes over. And he has that, I think, maybe I'm just reading between the lines, but he has that same moment of panic that Solomon had when he prayed to God for wisdom. In Rehoboam's case, he calls Solomon's advisors to him. The people have come and they have sent a message to Rehoboam. Let up some. You're collecting too many taxes. You're making us work too hard. We're not going to continue serving you. So he calls these advisors, who apparently are older men, but they're advisors of Solomon. He calls them together and he said, "What should I do?" And they say, "You know what? If you would lighten up just a little bit, these people would follow you to the ends of the earth." So he sends the advisors away, and then he gets his friends, younger people, and he says to them, "Here's what's happening. What should I do?" And they say, "You should make it harder on the people. Up their requirements of what they need to do. Make them pay more taxes. Make them work harder. They'll fear you that way." Well, Rehoboam went with the younger guys, and he told the people of Israel that my pinky should be thicker than my father's thighs or something like that. Basically what he's saying is, I'm going to make things worse for you. So immediately the people of Israel go back home, back to their tents or wherever they lived. And the northern part of the kingdom, basically 10.5 tribes, left. So he lost his kingdom because he was too hard on them. He listened to the wrong crowd. So I guess I'm saying two things. Seek advice, but be careful who you're seeking advice from. Seek wise counsel. Now, back to the lesson. Let's look again at Proverbs 12:2. A good man obtains favor from the Lord, but a man of wicked intentions he will condemn. Sometimes, most times, when there's a big decision involved, we shouldn't jump to what we're going to do immediately. I, and I bet the rest of you too, tend to jump to a decision too quickly. We need to take time on these big things. Think about a job promotion. Think about a transfer. Think about that kind of thing. Pray to God. Ask for His help, His wisdom. As we pray daily, we ought to pray for wisdom. We're going to see that. I keep telling you what we're going to do, but we're going to see that in James in a few minutes if I can get that far. But sometimes we shouldn't be so quick to make a decision. We should pray to God. It does a couple of things. God knows what we need. He doesn't need us to pray to Him, does He? But it focuses our minds on, this is what I think I need, God. And this is what I... Sometimes when you get to having to say it out loud to God, you get to thinking, you know, God, maybe I shouldn't pray for that red cherry Corvette that I've been wanting. It's not as important as I thought. Or if it's something really big, it makes us think the pros and cons of, should I take that new job or should I stay where I am? Those kind of things. The blessings and punishments of life are sometimes the result of wise or foolish decisions. We know that. We've talked about over and over that decisions have consequences. Proverbs 11:31 says, "If the righteous will be recompensed on the earth, how much more the ungodly and the sinner?" And I guess, I don't know, when I was first thinking about this, I was thinking about maybe it's controversial, but the more I've thought about it over the last 2 days, I don't think it's controversial. Do you believe God intervenes in your life? If you don't, why do you bother praying at all? If you don't believe that things can be done, you know, Edward talks about sometimes about the people who believe that God created the world and everything in it, but then He wound it up like a clock and He just steps back and lets it run. Thank you, Jackie. That's exactly right. And that's what it's saying here, Proverbs 11:31. If the righteous will be recompensed on the earth, sometimes we are rewarded. That's what recompense means, right? While we're here. How should the one intent on pleasing God proceed? That's what we're supposed to do, right? Please God. Well, first off, we've got to seek to live in a righteous manner. How can we please God, follow God, try to please Him if we don't know what He wants? So that brings on study. Again, trying to lead to wisdom. Look at Proverbs 12:3. A man is not established by wickedness, but the root of the righteous cannot be moved. There's a stability. That's one reason I think if we back up and look, that's one reason we want to be around that righteous person. It's one reason we want to be around that wise person. There's a stability there. They're not all over the map. with believing one thing today and another thing tomorrow, and they're better to be around. Jump down to Proverbs 12:5. The thoughts of the righteous are right, but the counsels of the wicked are deceitful. See, there's that. They're grounded. They're not going to move. Look at verse 7. The wicked are overthrown and are no more, but the house of the righteous will stand. They're going to be there. There's somebody you can depend on. I hope we're trying to be that person, that somebody you can depend on.
That's one reason I can't understand why people don't take every opportunity to be here at every opportunity, because if you're not, you're more than likely going to have evil companions that are corrupt with good morals. We get strength one from another. And the more time we spend together, the more strength we get to live Christian.
And that's important, because look at Matthew 5:16. People are watching. We can't act one way here and another way over here, because people are watching. Matthew 5:16. Let your light shine before men in such a way that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven. Proverbs 27:2. I don't know if I marked that one. I'm sorry. Just a moment. I thought I had all my Bible verses marked so that I could jump right to them. Proverbs 27:2 says, let another praise you and not your own mouth, a stranger and not your own lips. Don't be bragging on yourself. If you need any bragging on, somebody will take care of it. You don't have to worry about that. Yes, Jack?
I know that me and my brothers in Christ are not perfect. We all make mistakes. But I also know that if we live together, we're much stronger than we are apart.
Exactly. We know the example of the cords wrapped together, right? How much stronger it is. Christianity is the same way. Real quickly, I just want to point this out. One of the points of emphasis in Scripture over and over is the blessings associated with hard work. Ecclesiastes 5:12 says, the sleep of the working man is pleasant, whether he eats little or much, but the full stomach of the rich man does not allow him to sleep. Proverbs 12:11 is saying a whole lot that same thing. Ephesians 4:28. Let me read this one and then we'll quit. Ephesians 4:28. He who steals must steal no longer, but rather he must labor, performing with his own hands what is good, so that he may have something to share with one who has need. Not necessarily for yourself, but to be able to share it with others. Okay, I appreciate your attention. Sorry I ran over.